And it's 1 p.m. on the dot. And so I would like to welcome everyone to today's event on operational security, where we're gonna learn about some practical tools, tips and tricks to stay safer online. My name is Dominika Luzar, and I'm a training coordinator with TechSoup Europe. I work with TechSoup on various projects supporting civil society in terms of media literacy and ways to stay safe online. TechSoup Europe supports civil society organizations to use the best technology for social change. So if you are looking for software, hardware, tech solutions, training or community to help you deal with digital transformation, I do recommend visiting TechSoup Europe's website and just get in touch with us. Hello, Stefan. Stefan is back with us. Anyway, our today's event is being hosted on the HiveMind platform. Now, HiveMind, it's an initiative supported by TechSoup Europe. It's a unique online meeting space, gathering activists, trainers, teachers, journalists, CSOs, and practically a wider community interested in learning more about media literacy. We've just pasted links to TechSoup's and HiveMind sites in the chat. So just, follow us and visit us someday. Okay, back to our event. Some housekeeping rules. So the event is going to last 60 minutes in total. And in the last 10-15 minutes, we are going to have a question and answer session with our wonderful presenters. And in order to talk to them, you should paste your comments and your questions into the chat, choosing the to all panelists and attendees option. This way we can see it and we'll be able to pass your questions over to our speakers. Of course, it's a webinar format, so it'll be muted and your video will be off the whole time. Now, back to the most important part of our event, to our speakers. Today we have with us Dr. Melanie Rieback and Stefan Marsiske of Radically Open Security. Radically Open Security is the first non-profit computer security consultancy company in the world. And that it was also named the 50th most innovative SME by the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. It's a super interesting organization of people being really passionate about making the world a safer place. Melanie is the CEO and the co-founder of Radically Open Security. And she's also a TEDx speaker. She's an ethical hacker. She's one of the most successful women in the Netherlands and one of the most inspiring ones in tech. Stefan is a free software developer, and he's a security expert who cares deeply about human rights in the digital context. And for the last 5 years, Steph has been working for Radically Open Security as a pen tester and a code auditor. Now, they both have really extensive experience in giving trainings to people all over the globe in terms of operational security. And so this is why we are here today. We are here to listen to Stefan and Melanie and learn from them and become more resilient and secure online. So please welcome Melanie and Stefan. Guys, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm just going to start out by sharing my screen so we can see the presentation. So just one moment. I just need to maximize it. All right, you all can see the slides? Yes? Oh, Dominika? Okay, well, I will, very good. I will assume you all can see them. So my name is Melanie. I've been in security for about 20 years. And yeah, Steph also has been working with security and NGOs probably just as long, I think. So, and Radically Open Security does a tremendous amount of work with the nonprofit, NGO, and civil society sector. That's why we're really happy and proud to work together with TechSoup. So thank you again also for inviting us. But we've really worked on quite a large number of cases with civil society. We've been participants in what's called the CVCDR, which is a incident response team for the civil society sector. But we've also worked with everything from you know, the Red Cross to the smallest organizations like little free speech organizations with Iranian refugees and everything in between. So, you know, we're going to be talking today about operational security, which essentially means, you know, if you are in the nonprofit sector or the civil society sector, how do you make sure that you're not compromised, that, you know, that your security is not compromised, of your things on the server side, of your devices? How do you make sure that you are not social engineered? And you also need to make sure that you know, you do this before you need it. So that's really what this presentation today is going to be about. So Steph, do you want to say something about this slide?
Yeah, well, the most important part about operational security, that it's really a process that you need to apply, and it has it's not a technical thing at all. So we're going to show you some steps of that, but the most important is you need to know what your critical assets are. You need to identify your adversaries, your enemies, and what their capabilities are. And you need to know your own vulnerabilities, your own weaknesses. And then based on all this information, you can make an assessment of how and what you need to protect. And then you apply these protections, or as we call them, mitigations. So this is a 5-step process that you iterate all the time during your work. And if you do this well, then you will not be interrupted in achieving your goals by your adversaries.
Yep, hopefully. So basically, one thing that's kind of interesting is it is instructive to look at terrorists. Yes, really, terrorists. The reason why is because they are essentially trying to balance operational security with achieving their own political goals. In that sense, I mean, there's actually not that much difference between, you know, a civil society activist and a terrorist. In fact, many civil society activists are defined as terrorists by hostile governments, which basically means that you know, it provides us with a set of examples that are both instructive and also well, there's quite a few battle stories also that we can enjoy and that we can learn something from.
And again, I need to emphasize here that many of these things that are used by spy, terrorist, and criminal organizations are not technical at all. They're just common sense, natural things that you do in the face of a threat. For example, compartmentalization. You know, these old pictures, these posters where say, loose lips sink ships. This is nothing technical about this, right? And this is an operational security measure, that you don't talk to all the people about what is sensitive, right?
Yep, indeed. We have to keep in mind that it is much easier to be an attacker than a defender. Just quite simply because when you are a defender, you are fighting against the tide of complexity. Whereas with attackers, they only have to get one small thing right to compromise you. You know, it makes it hard when you're a defender, and it does mean you need to constantly be raising the bar. So as Stefan had said before, it really all starts with identification of your critical assets.
If I may, a
you
short
need to ask
interjection.
the question, for example. Yes, go ahead.
With the attacker and the defender imbalance, to going back to that, what it really means is that you need to be prepared that you will be owned one way or another. The real question is, how often will you be owned and how badly will you be owned? And the other thing that I wanted to note here is that the attacker and defender role reverses as soon as the attacker is successful, because the attacker doesn't want to be noticed. And if you notice as a defender that an attacker has breached you, then you can actually attack, and then the roles reverse, and then you want to boot him. And so this is not as, it also means that the attackers will be owned, because then when the roles reverse, they will also become defenders and you become the attackers. So this is something to keep in mind, that it's not as asymmetric. It's only asymmetric in the roles, but the roles reverse. And we all will be in both of these roles sooner or later. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So it all gets started really with the identification of our critical assets. So you need to ask yourself the question, what are my crown jewels? Basically, what is important to me? You also need to ask yourself the related question, what are the crown jewels in the eyes of my attacker? It could be that the list of the crown jewels is actually not the same. So what I consider to be my crown jewels might not necessarily be the same as what my attacker sees their crown jewels in my infrastructure to be. In the case of NGOs and journalists, it could very well be things like your sources, donors, supporters, different tactical plans that you have, and of course also all of your IT infrastructure. And remember, you really have to focus, because if you try protecting everything, you're going to wind up protecting nothing. So you shouldn't necessarily spread all your eggs, across multiple baskets, but it's more just sort of like figure out which basket is really the most important, and spend your limited resources trying to protect the most important things. So
What is also notable here is that when you decide on what to spend your money on or your resources on for defense, your attacker will try to make you A, spend on something that is irrelevant for his attack, and B, to overspend, to make you overspend. So you're just wasting your resources, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing that's important is minimizing your attack surface, because there's this sea of complexity which is making it hard for us. And the more that we can minimize this complexity, then the easier it will be to be able to protect things. Do you want to say more about this stuff?
Well, yeah, this is one of the most fundamental security principles or operational security mitigations that you can have. You want to keep anything that you work with as simple as possible, and you want to understand it. And complex system, no one can understand. As you know, you don't understand your browser, you don't understand your computer. So, and with all the complexity that these come with, you really want to trim down. And that also means that you trim down your attack surface. And in the end, if you have only one, and there will be many examples later on where this minimization of attack surface will come back and will show you a good example. And basically that means that very many products that you see coming from the industry, from the IT industry, are actually enlarging your attack surface and are counterproductive when it comes to operational security, even though many of these products even try to sell you security, while in many cases they actually reduce your security. And I think this is one of the most important sentences here. If you don't understand what is happening, how do you know if it's doing what it should? So if you're not seeing what is happening, and if you're not seeing that this is doing what it should, then you cannot be ever sure that this is what it should be doing. So, and even if you don't understand what your system, your own system, you can assume that your attacker will understand your system, and they will understand your system better than you do. And this is Shannon's maxim. And for example, my favorite example is browsers. We use browsers nowadays for everything, but browsers really are a means to externalize the development cost of software onto the user. And the costs that are being externalized are not only monetary, but these are also security costs and a whole bunch of other costs. So all the stuff that is being developed in browsers, in JavaScript, is really a liability for you as individuals, as organizations, and for society.
Okay. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah.
There are some other principles that we need to keep in mind, like the principle of least privilege. This is similar to saying the complexity of things. It's basically that should be given. So in other words, it's kind of like need to know. If people don't need to know, then or if they don't need access to such a thing, then it reduces your attack surface, in being able to reduce this. Another principle that is quite important is defense in depth, which basically means that you need redundant security. You need backup. So basically what that means, or I should say backup security mechanisms. So if one thing fails, you want basically it to not be total loss. Okay. Another thing also that I'd like to move on with is the whole concept of Datensparsamkeit, which basically just means do not collect more data than you need to. So what that basically means is what is not there cannot be breached. It's also sort of similar in spirit to when you think about things like the GDPR. Basically, also we're being instructed to minimize the amount of data that we're collecting. Again, it's also sort of common sense and best practice for security, because, if you think about things like bulletproof holsters, which of course serve the criminal sector, what they will frequently do is not maintain any logs. So if they're raided by the police, then they can basically throw their hands up and say, sorry, we don't have that data in the first place. But it's not just those on the criminal side that can do this. I mean, those of us also on the legitimate, good side should also be doing this. And this is also another important principle.
So the example here on this page is the attachment A is coming from a subpoena from the US Department of Justice, subpoenaing the data about two phone numbers from Signal, the chat app. And Signal does not connect any data at all about their users. And the FBI actually wanted to have all the data available about these phone numbers. And you can see all the data that Signal was able to give back as the last connection date and the date when the account was created, nothing else. And so this is really useless for the FBI in figuring out anything else about these accounts. And so this is a super good example of how you should do this. If you don't need it, don't collect it.
Thanks, Steph. Next, know your enemy. Because if you understand your adversary, then it's going to also help you understand how you need to prioritize your defenses. Because remember, it's easier to attack than to defend. And also, especially as relatively small, relatively poorly funded organizations, it means we need to pick and choose about what we can spend our money on. The more we understand the capacity of our attackers, and the more we understand our attacker model, in other words, what keeps us up at night, we need to be able to answer that question, because that will help us prioritize where we want to dedicate our defenses to. Another thing also is we had spoken before about intelligence agencies, and it's interesting to know, because of course a number of civil society groups do have nation states and intelligence agencies as part of your attack model. There are open source intelligence sources where you can actually find quite interesting information on their capabilities and also on the tools that they use. So things like various tendering documents, leaks, such as the Vault 7 or spy files, a series from WikiLeaks, the NSA's Ant catalog. Citizen Lab is amazing. They're constantly reverse engineering all kinds of basically state-sponsored malware and these kinds of surveillance tools. And if you want to know more, there's super resource. Bugplanet.info, and of course also Bellingcat. And Bellingcat is really fantastic also for teaching you how to use open source intelligence sources. There's also some recommended reading here also just in general on these intelligence agencies and spycraft. Some bits of it will probably be more relevant to your attacker model than other bits, but nonetheless, these are just a few tips for if you have some free time and you want to read some things that are interesting. The Grug has a blog with a lot of information. Also, terrorist
and super good case studies.
Yeah, exactly. And we can, by the way, give a copy of these slides to Dominica. So if you want to have these lists after the fact, we can get this to you.
These are clickable links in the PDF, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, we're going to move on and talk about common attacks on NGOs and journalists. And we're going to start out by thinking about basically discrediting people. So in other words, your reputation could be attacked. There could be fake news, basically, that's being spread about you. And again, you know, this is sort of also a bit of spycraft kinds of techniques. So anyway, additionally, a kind of unlikely battleground that is also taking place is Wikipedia. So it's really odd. You wouldn't think it, but there's actually a battle for controlling the spin, you know, on information that's playing out on a regular basis on Wikipedia. And if you were to look at, you know, basically any kinds of Wikipedia pages of movements that are the least bit controversial or that have you know, institutional opponents or these kinds of things. If you look at the edit logs, you'll see quite a bit of, yeah, I mean, edits going back and forth because, of course, so many people nowadays sort of consider Wikipedia to be the objective truth, you know, and this has had also real world consequences. Oh, Steph, by the way, I think you're muted. You there, Steph? Hello? Okay. Anyway, but so yeah, so basically there's actually a German documentary that provides more information about this, talking about the dark side of Wikipedia. So this is really interesting. Another thing also is deep fakes. So talking about information warfare and people that are trying to discredit you, basically you can create, using artificial intelligence, really convincing, well, basically sort of replicas of people. And this can happen both with voice as well as with video. And it's pretty convincing. The way to get around these deep fakes is to use what's called liveness checking. And liveness checking is basically used to verify any kinds of, well, check the liveness of any kinds of biometrics. This also works for things like fingerprints and iris scans, just to make sure that people are not giving you, oh, by the way, Steph, could you go somewhere a little less noisy? Sorry. Anyway, so, but the idea is that if I want, so somebody is basically presenting a video, and then this video is, you know, I want to make sure that it's not a deep fake. What you can do is you can actually ask them, for example, to sit in a swivel chair and just turn around, these kinds of things. Or you can ask certain questions and then, you know, get answers basically really quickly. It's really difficult for AI programs to be able to respond this quickly. So so this kind of liveness checking is really great for countering deepfakes. Phishing, of course, is another one of these topics. You know, sometimes you know, the human is always the weakest link, and incredibly easy for someone to just send you, the phishing mail where with the attachment, with that link that you click on, otherwise send you that you drop that USB stick on the ground that you plug into your machine. And if you can't find sort of a technical entrance into somebody's infrastructure, basically, doing it with phishing, compromising this human factor is always a really easy way to attack people. Do be aware that things like two-factor authentication are really excellent at providing extra layers of security against phishing. Also, do keep in mind that devices are listening to you, and they're tracking you. Certainly, in the case of criminals, it's fairly trivial. If you have even if the phone is turned off, if you still have the battery in your phone, they can still be triangulated within cells, and police use this all the time to find criminals. So, but do bear in mind, the definition of criminal tends to vary from place to place. Some people think Greenpeace is a criminal. I would disagree, but but in either case, do be aware that keeping your devices about you is risky because the webcams can be compromised, the microphones can be compromised. There's been certainly cases of smart television sets, also spying. Basically, any kind of IoT device that has sensors can be used for basically for surveillance of some kind. So just do be aware of this. All right. So another thing also is that we like to chat with each other, and certainly if we're activists, we will probably be trying to coordinate amongst ourselves to do different kinds of activistic actions. We use chat programs, whether it's Signal or WhatsApp or Memo or Facebook Messenger or whatever. The point is that we should rely on end-to-end encryption. But when we start getting into scenarios where we have group chat, because there's sort of no longer quite as strictly end-to-end, you're weakening the protocol to the extent that it can leak basically information more easily. Seth, you want to add something?
Yeah, so this is actually a thing. Any protocol or any app that allows you to use multiple devices with the same account, or even worse, doing group chatting, has much lower security guarantees than a one-on-one chat where there's only two peers allowed in a chat. And this is being abused. This has been proposed a few years back, and it's being abused or used, depending on your view, of course, by law enforcement agencies all over the world. So even the German BKA, the Bundeskriminalamt, is able to listen into WhatsApp communications between people, even though WhatsApp itself is what everyone is looking for, end-to-end encrypted, and yet during this kind of ghosting, they are able, it's just a criminal, it's just the cops, it's not really spies.
Yeah.
Signal has the same, there's a question in this chat. Signal is also able to handle multiple devices and handle group chat. So with Signal, this is exactly the same case. An organization, law enforcement probably, will be able to add an extra device to your account, and they will be able to listen into this. Actually, there's a link in the bottom which also shows the problem with Signal. This is the footnote number 8. If you read that, you can read more on this. Just to answer the question in the chat. That's it. The PDF will be published later, and then you can just click on it, answering the question in the chat. So all of these chat applications that we're using, they are available to be ghosted, really, because people expect to be able to use multiple devices, their phones, their laptops, their tablets, and people want to do group messaging. And you know, if you have big groups, like even just a few dozen people, how do you know that not one of those dozen people is copying out all this data itself? Or how do you guarantee that all of them are allegedly in there? And you know, and even in the worst case, if I mean, you have a tightly knit group and all of them are trusted by you, how do you know that one of them is not turned by the cops, which happens all the time, or one of them is actually arrested without you knowing it, and their device is in the control of law enforcement? Or, for example, when you pass through a security gate at the airport, when they take away your devices or it runs through, there is devices. If you really want to backdoor a device, you can easily have physical access for just half a minute and add a new user, for example, in an automated fashion. And from then on, you're owned. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing also that you have to bear in mind is with plain text logs. Just because your chat app is end-to-end encrypted, that won't necessarily help you if you have clear text logging turned on. And here's a screen text which shows in one particular case.
This is Adium. This is an Apple chat program that does OTR chat. Yeah. But again, here also, which goes back to one thing that we said in the beginning with the Datensparsamkeit, that self-destroying messages are a good thing, because those messages don't exist anymore if they are trustable, that actually they do self-destroy themselves. So instead of logging everything, you should destroy everything. Yeah, leave no trace.
Yeah, agreed. All right, there's also what we call evil maid attacks. And basically, if, like, let's say you are going to a conference and you go to a hotel, and let's say that you want to do something along the lines of go out for a run, or perhaps yeah, go use the hotel sauna. You know, people might be inclined to leave their devices in the hotel room. Or otherwise to leave the devices in the safe in the hotel room. Do bear in mind that both the rooms as well as the safes are extremely trivially broken into, which, and you know, and this is a pretty frequent scenario for how people are compromised. So if you can, if you're in a location that you don't trust, try and keep your devices with you at all times. I know that it's inconvenient, and obviously it's not going to work for something like a sauna, but you know, it's we have to do our best for this.
I would even go further, even in places where you trust that it's where you don't expect an attack, you should always keep your physical proximity to your devices. So however nice it looks, don't go to the sauna and don't leave your stuff upstairs. Well, it's really not worth it.
Okay. Next, we're going to talk about biometrics. Be aware that it is, in many cases, pretty easy to copy biometrics or otherwise to falsify them. You know, it's there's a number of hackers that specialize in biometric hacking. I believe it was a friend of yours, Steph, that took this photograph.
Yes, actually, it's a colleague of us.
Yes, it is a colleague of ours.
He works rarely because it's a very special expertise that he has, but he nevertheless works for Radical Open Security, and he's the expert who recovered fingerprints about 8 years ago from a picture of Angela Merkel's hands while she was gesturing. And he was doing the unlocking of iPhones, of Android phones with iris, with face scanning, and all these other things. He's like the expert. And the techniques that he develops are going over to the law enforcement agencies, and so they're also being deployed there. And let's not forget that even if they don't need to use these technologies, in many places it might be illegal to arrest you and then take your finger and push it onto the phone to unlock the phone. But I mean, this happens all the time, that these laws are not obeyed by the keepers of the law. And so it happens all the time. For example, in Finland, it is even legal to use your biometrics against you. In the US, it is not, but still it happens despite it not being legal. So biometrics are not a good protection for sensitive data at all.
Yep.
And they're worse than that, actually. And that's the next
Yeah.
slide.
Yes. So yeah, and photographs are another one of these things that you have to be really careful about. There's a kind of funny story from one of the Dutch hacker camps from well, probably at least a decade ago at this point. But some hackers from the group called Tool, which is a lockpicking association, had actually made a photograph of the keys to a police's pair of handcuffs. And they took that photograph, went off, came back the next day, and went up to the cop and opened his handcuffs. They were, of course, doing this to make a point, but it's equally easy to do these kinds of things with pictures of your biometrics. You can see, for example, here this picture with this mature blue Stilton. Yeah, based upon such a photograph, there are techniques to be able to make physical copies. So if you are taking photographs of things, try if you can to obscure the biometrics that are in the photos. You can do this without reducing image quality too much, or at least for the parts of the photo that you actually do want people to look at. It's also very similar when taking photographs and putting things on social media. People do really silly things like look, I just got the keys to my new apartment, photo, or like, look, I just got my new credit card, or like, look, I just got my new, passport or driver's license, or use common sense with this kind of stuff. You can blur this out, and there's no reason why you should be putting this kind of stuff online anyway.
There's two links on this page, the Fox and the Loki. These are both online university academic services where you can actually upload your pictures, and it will distort the pictures in a way that for a human it's non-recognizable at all, so you don't recognize that there's any distortion in it. But facial recognition will fail to identify your picture or you on the picture correctly. And that is something really awesome, and that should be used as much as possible. When you shouldn't be sharing pictures at all in the first place, but if you have to, like a group picture or something of your company employees, an about or team page or something, then you should apply these programs to protect them from facial recognition algorithms.
Great. Next, we're going to go back to the topic again of chat apps. They're not all equal, and depending on your attacker model, you may or may not want to use one that's owned by Facebook. Just saying. Some of the more popular secure chat apps, of course, Signal is the most obvious one. There was a short debate about how open the source was, but it seems that debate has gotten resolved. There used to be, Wire used to be in Switzerland, but recently moved to the US. So that also changed its threat model. So behave accordingly. Telegram, think about your relationship with the Russians when deciding whether or not to use that one.
With Telegram, there's also the really strange crypto that they're using. They're doing stuff that no real cryptographer that is trained in this art would consider as sane. So, and Telegram does no encryption by default, and it's quite difficult to actually do so. Really, you shouldn't be using Telegram if it's not really necessary. I think it's really a brilliant honey trap. Really, think more in the. It reminds me of Crypto AG, the Swiss company that was selling encryption hardware all over the world, and just last year we had more evidence that it was all compromised from the start by the CIA and the BND.
Yeah. Be careful of anything implemented in JavaScript. This is a theme that will keep coming back. And there's also a few other options like off the record version 4, as well as Briar and tinfoil chat.
Yeah, Briar is a really mature tool, and it is also an kind of off-the-grid thing. So it does also do messaging via Bluetooth. That is very useful in demonstrations, for example. Avoiding the telecommunications infrastructure. I can warmly recommend Briar. Really, it is a well-designed tool, and I know actually the authors. And tinfoil chat is really, the name is programmed, so it really, tinfoil chat is really for those who really have to secure their communications. I would say, for example, Julian Assange would be a prime user of this. If he would be free. It really is about having 3 computers, one computer where you compose your messages, one computer where you read your messages, and one computer that is connected to the network. And so this is a really nice compartmentalization concept. I think it's a bit maybe too expensive for you people here. But if you are in this threat model, then do consider tinfoil chat. It's an awesome solution. The question was here in the chat also about Wire again. Wire is basically equivalent to Signal. There's one big difference. The big difference is that Signal still requires phone numbers, so only people with SIM cards and phone numbers can use Signal, where Wire allows any kind of username that you can just choose for yourself. And so this is a cool feature. I also know that Wire was developed in Berlin, so it's German people, and they use the same protocol, the Signal protocol that Signal also uses. So on this, on the technical side, they are more or less equivalent. On the usability side, the difference is really I need a phone or I don't need a phone. But then Wire is also of course, running on a phone, and most people will be using it on a phone, so this is kind of irrelevant for people. But the different thing here is that Wire was a German-Swiss company, but they actually had created a Delaware company that is now owning Wire, and so that opens them up to the US legal system. So if you do anything that is against US interests, you might not want to use Wire either, but that is true for Signal as well, right? But then with Signal, we see Signal is not really collecting much data, but when it comes to ghosting, Signal and Wire are also equivalent.
Yeah. All right.
Well, the WhatsApp data privacy FOSS is really about Facebook connecting the data with WhatsApp information, like who you chat with, how you chat with, how often you chat with, and stuff like that. Yes, I would say don't use Facebook features. Any Facebook product, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, you should avoid them all. So because it's all just one big kraken, and it just siphons all your data, and you are not going to profit from that. I know there's a lot of people FOMOing, fearing of missing out, but you shouldn't be fearing that. Just don't succumb to the kraken, and don't use Facebook products.
Well, once again, I think I'll nuance that a little bit by saying it depends on your attacker model, but yeah.
Well, this is not really an attacker model. This is really, you're sacrificing not only your own privacy by creating these network effects, you also sacrifice the privacy of those people who are not using that, because there's this pressure, and there's this like, hey, you're not on Facebook, you're not on WhatsApp, and this really creates also vulnerabilities for those people who are not using this. Just say no. And it's a decentralization thing also.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to Tor. So Tor stands for the Onion Router. It is a product that is used for protecting your anonymity by basically going through multiple layers of proxies, basically every time with a different circuit. Be aware that Tor is a double-edged sword. At least over 25% of the exit nodes of Tor are known to be actively malicious, and probably some significant percentage beyond that are owned by law enforcement, which basically means, it's all great with, the fact that you've got encrypted communications, but if the endpoint is able to read it, then you still need to be extremely careful about what you're sending through there. And you also need to make sure that you're using additional layers of end-to-end encryption on top of that. So there's also plenty of attacks that have been demonstrated against the Tor network, de-anonymization attacks. Certainly, if you are running, usually they're like browser-based attacks. Avoid using really buggy, complex software and anything using JavaScript, because that is a really easy way of being able to sort of deliver additional information sort of outside of the Tor system, and also be careful with using it against the Five Eyes, just because being aware that they also own a significant percentage of the exit nodes. Oh, and by the way, the hidden services also face the same classes of attacks as the clients, the web clients do. So another tool that we're going to talk about is PGP, email encryption. It's generally a good thing to do, but big but it also is not as good as you think it is, and it, worse yet, can even give you a false sense of security. The problems with PGP is really, this communications is only as secure as you sort of trust that the public key that you're using actually belongs to the person that you think it does. And, unless you've been doing a whole bunch of key signing parties, which of course, is sort of a geek rite of passage for people like me and Steph. But, if you haven't been through key signing parties, then essentially it's really hard, without any other out of band channels to be able to validate. Somebody uploaded the key, and that somebody is claiming to be a certain person, with that certain email address. But is it really that person? I mean, you don't know for sure. Anyone can upload a key for a certain person's email address, to the key servers. And, also many, PGP clients also automatically retrieve these keys from the servers, sometimes by default, even without it's asking you, which essentially, again, is sort of putting trust, and again, really, this is only as secure as the amount of trust that you put into the whole web of trust that's behind it.
So with PGP, the thing is really that it's a tool that comes from the 90s. And I think as a political weapon, it was much more important in getting cryptography out to the people than actually providing security. And we don't have anything else. And it's really horrible. It's really difficult to use for normal people. Even for people who have a clue, it's really difficult to use. It's like a Swiss Army knife, but you will always cut your finger with it. And but it's marginally better than not encrypting at all. But really, the first thing, if you have an attacker that is compromising your computer, and you have PGP, and the attacker knows that, they're going to go for your PGP keys, and then they can read all your emails from the past that they ever seen, and they can also read all your emails from the future that you see. So this is really, really only do it if you have to. You will not find really anyone on the internet from the cryptography department that will recommend you to use PGP. And I cannot really do that either, that you can use instead of PGP. There's SMIME, which is like this industrial standard. This you can use if you're in a big organization, in a big company, like for example, if you work for Microsoft, IBM, Siemens, Philips, where you have hundreds of thousands of people working in the company, then you can use SMIME, but this SMIME only works really inside the company. For outside communication, it doesn't really work. So email is really, it should be dead. And I think it is dead, but it's going to haunt us for many, many decades more until we get rid of email. We are just stuck with this thing, and it's really sticking to our boot, and we should scrape it off, but it's really difficult to do. I'm sorry.
I'm
say so.
a bit less cynical than Steph, but nonetheless, I would say, look, defense in depth. I mean, I think it's better to use it than not to use it. I mean, for the marginal gains that it'll give you in preventing whoever's on the network from being able to be able to sniff your mail.
If you need to message,
but just don't have unrealistic expectations.
If you need to message things, then I would rather go with Signal than with PGP. If you have to share files, then I would rather go with Magic Wormhole than with PGP. If you have to sign things, maybe use PGP. That's a thing. And PGP signatures are pretty good protections against phishing attempts, email phishing attempts, for example. That's a cool thing, actually. But even that is, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to browsers. So basically, browsers are huge and complicated and buggy and have a really large attack surface. So in general, I mean, anything that is browser-based, you should be extremely suspicious about it. You should be even more suspicious if there's all kinds of plugins and extensions, because all of this is also continuing to increase your attack surface. In general, the less you're able to do with something, the more that a piece of software is sort of dedicated to one single function. In other words, the less useful it is, the less functional it is, probably the more secure it's going to be. And that's sort of like why one of the keys to protecting yourselves with web browsers is just quite simply to try and deactivate as much of the dynamic functionality as possible. And there are tools like NoScript, but also this, link cleaner and some of these others that will help you to achieve that.
Yeah, and here I want to note that from a security point of view, the best browsers are Chrome-based browsers, but of course they violate your privacy. At least Google is trying really hard to do so via the browsers. Brave tries to mitigate this, being a privacy-respecting browser based on Chrome. So you have kind of the security of Chrome, but not quite, because they're always lagging behind what Chrome is already fixing in security bugs. Brave will be a few days or maybe even a few weeks behind that. And also, Google has this super good security team, which Brave doesn't have, and the money behind that. So, but Brave is better in protecting your privacy. And if you're using latest updated Windows version, Edge is now also based on Chrome, and Edge has some really awesome, but only in the latest version, has some really awesome features that make it actually better than the Google Chrome-based browsers. And of course, Firefox is somewhere in the middle. From a security point of view, it's not as strong as the Chrome-based browsers, but from a privacy point of view, it's maybe better than the rest of these. Yeah. Yeah, but really, what I wanted also to say that even if something doesn't run in a browser, many times applications are developed as Electron apps. And Electron is a framework from Facebook, which is basically a really old Chrome browser, and they just run their application in this old Chrome browser. And the security of these apps is abysmal, and they should be as far as avoided as possible. For example, Signal Desktop is also an Electron app. And the security of that is much less than your Chrome browser that is updated to the latest version. So that's about that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move on to the topic of password managers. We are lazy as people, and we have bad memories too. So this is why we choose bad passwords. We choose ones that are easy to remember, and then we reuse them all over the place. And precisely the fact that they're simple enough and reused enough that we can remember them are why they're easy for attackers to be able to crack. You can use password managers, but be aware that those are also a double-edged sword. Basically what it is it can actually handle things like password generation, password management, password resets for you. That's fantastic. All you need to do is one login to log into that the vault to be able to get access to all those passwords. But it's that single login that is also the weakness of these password managers. So basically, what this means is that it just takes one compromise and then the attacker has access to all of your passwords. Or it just takes one moment of neglectfulness to actually be able to lose access, basically lose that password to your password vault, and then you no longer can get access to those passwords that are in the password manager. Of course, you can bypass all of this anyways, just by password resets. So, I mean, for me personally, I just prefer to, well, you can skip the vault and basically just, auto create really complicated passwords that you're never going to remember. Don't reuse them. And just if you, at a certain point, you have to log in a second time, just do a password reset, at an email address that's well protected. I mean, that's a technique that I like using.
Okay, there was 2 questions in the chat. One is about how about DocuSign for e-signatures? Is it safe? I don't know personally DocuSign. I know it's a PKI-based solution. It's a European Union AIDAS implementation, really. And as such, I guess it's a traditional thing, and these laws are not quite up to date. But I think it's reasonable for what people use it for most of the time. But I don't know really much about this. The second question is Dashlane a secure password manager? And this fits very well to this topic. I would say no. Any password manager that integrates into your browser is easy also to impersonate, so that can look like Dashlane is asking for your master password so you can log in somewhere. And so you just give up your master password. And that is something that you don't want at all. When you use a password manager, always use a password manager that is separate from your browser, or the only exceptions that I can imagine, use the password manager that is in your browser. Because all of your browsers have a password manager, and they have visible user interface guarantees that cannot be emulated by a malicious web page that tries to get your master password. Basically, it's the pop-up that comes up. You can easily code a pop-up that looks like the Dashlane pop-up, and it's not. It's not possible in many cases to actually do the same pop-up that your browser does when you use the browser password manager. That is an exception. But even that is not completely true, because browsers also have this feature that is called full screen view. For example, when you want to watch videos, using that feature, it is possible to just overlay the whole browser, and it makes a malicious application is able to pop up a window that looks like a valid browser window while it is not. So the full screen feature in browsers, if you are handling sensitive data, should be disabled. Otherwise, it is possible to do very convincing phishing websites that can even impersonate your operating system windows. In general, avoid password managers that integrate into your browser. That is my recommendation.
Okay. I think that we are going to move on. We're going to have to go through the last few bits just a bit quickly because we're in the last couple minutes. Two-factor in either case is something that you should always be using just because passwords can be cracked, and then having two-factor is a good backup. Bearing in mind that, a second factor isn't a second factor if it's embedded in the same device as the first factor, but also that if you're using a separate hardware token, if you lose this, that can potentially hinder your access for getting back into your accounts again. VPNs are also a great idea because the untrusted Wi-Fi is a thing, especially if you're traveling or you're at conferences or you're on at a train station or any form of Wi-Fi you don't understand. I recommend you get a Wi-Fi pineapple and play around with it. It's a script kiddie tool for exploiting untrusted Wi-Fi, and it'll allow you to see exactly how easy it is to attack untrusted Wi-Fi. But generally, VPN is a good solution for this. It doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money. You can set up OpenVPN, and clients like WireGuard for your devices, and you'll get a long way without spending much money. Antivirus is a double-edged sword. If you're completely tech illiterate, it could help you to raise the bar, but it's also a really fantastic backdoor. And there's been cases of antivirus, especially Kaspersky, getting compromised. And of course, that's a really easy way to get access to a bunch of machines at one time. So, you know, it could help in terms of defense in depth, but do understand it's increasing your attack surface. Backups, do it. We have to deal with things like ransomware, and you know, if you have backups, it's a lot better than paying the ransom. Also, make sure that you try actually restoring these backups and test that before you're actually compromised. This will save your butt if it is in the fire at a certain point.
And don't have your decryption key for your backups ransomed, because that really sucks.
Yeah. Let's see, so 3 more slides. So operating systems, be aware that there are some operating systems you can use that you can live boot from, like things like Tails, for example, that have full Tor integration and also lock things down to a certain extent. There's also Cubes, which you can use to really compartmentalize different operating systems into different virtual machines on your machine. Yes.
And I would recommend you to, if you use Microsoft products, use the latest Windows 10 with all the latest updates and security patches, because Microsoft has been bashed over the last 1.5, 2 decades so much that they actually have a very strong security development process. And on the other hand, Apple is really, really bad because they try to lock down any kind of security research on their products. So there's very little security research, and that is not good for the security of the product. It's only bad for researchers to research, but in the end, attackers will have their exploits for Apple. So, and of course, you can always use some recent Linux, but yeah.
Okay.
So,
content management systems, try and use statically compiled if possible. So things like Jekyll, Pelican is also another good one if you're doing some blogging. Try and avoid plugins and modules. Try and avoid WordPress, please. We run. Yeah, Andrew Paul, indeed. We run into these things all the time during pen tests, and it never ends well. Also, you know, keep those things automatically updated if you absolutely insist on using them. Avoid anything with JavaScript. We've said this before. And also be careful with certificate management. It's better to use Let's Encrypt than certificates which are self-signed, because in that case, you're also teaching bad habits to your users, and also make updates. So Canaries is the last, I think, concrete tip that we're going to give you for this presentation. There's this thing called data leakage protection, DLP, and there are these tokens which you would not ordinarily be seeing or using in your network or on hosts, but you can basically use them as little detectable tokens that if you see one suddenly going across your network, then you know something is not entirely correct. So it's sort of like that canary in the coal mine that's letting you know that something is being exfiltrated from your network that shouldn't be. Last slide. So there are all kinds of great resources that are out there that you should look at. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has quite a number of great resources and great tools on their webpage you should look at. Totem also has a number of online trainings, which are great. So basically in MOOC form that you can look at. GCA Toolkit, Fix Your Privacy, that one's in Dutch. Security in a Box, Tactical Tech. I think, Steph, you used to work for Tactical Tech. Yes,
I was also involved in some chapters of Security in a Box. And Totem project has actually grown up out of one of my projects, and then they expanded on that in a more traditional e-learning way than what I was doing. And from all of these, the best I can recommend you is actually SSD from the EFF. This is a really awesome and very well written guide. The others are also super good. I would warmly recommend all of them, but if you only have time for one, do the first one.
Great. And another comment that we want to make is we gave Dominica a copy of a operational security guide that we put together at Radically Open Security. It's open sourced, and we also have quite a number of the things we discussed today also mentioned in that guide. Dominica can distribute that to you. It's also available on GitHub with an open source license. So we heartily also welcome you to read that. So you'll all be receiving a copy of these slides and the OpSec manual. And for the rest, if you have any questions whatsoever, we are more than happy to spend the time talking to you. It's also worthwhile saying that we actually do work on a not-for-profit basis. This is part of our nonprofit business model with Radically Open Security, and we also work at cost price for nonprofits, NGOs, and civil society. So any of you though that need help, but you don't have much budgets, we're anyway happy to talk with you. So I guess that's about it.
Wow, Melanie, Steph, thank you so much. It's been so rich, so interesting, and so useful. We went a little bit over time, but I'm just curious because we have this like one super question in the chat. Do you think we could spare 3 minutes more of your time and just answer it?
Of course.
Thank you. It's a question from one of our participants. How to start working on cybersecurity of your NGOs? What should I do at first? And are there any tips how to actually start? Maybe there are some links you could share with us. This is the question.
Sure. So actually, Steph, do you want to answer this one?
Yes, so from my perspective, actually, when I prepared for this presentation, I prepared a bit longer presentation, which actually gives you answers to these questions. And the answer to that is implement this OpSec process where you have these 5 steps of identifying your critical assets, modeling your adversaries, and identifying your own weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and then in the 4th step, make a risk assessment of all of these, and based on this risk assessment, then implement mitigations in the last step, and execute this process iteratively. This is my first, and this is a very generic process, of course, but this is what you need to do. And on my second recommendations, which is not in this slide, but maybe we can actually share my full slide deck instead of the shortened slide deck. There is also a section on security principles, and I have a list of 14 security principles that are actually, or operational security principles. Again, they are not very technical, but of course they can also be applied on the technical, but also on the human level. And if you apply these 14 principles, then you are in tandem with the process, then you are on a good way to actually increase your security posture in general. But I'm sorry, in 45 minutes that we were planning to do here, this is not possible to present all of this in once and also be entertaining and not super boring.
Yeah, but that's fine. We can basically pass the longer deck also on to all of you. The other thing just to keep in mind is understand that you won't know how to defend yourself until you know how to attack yourself. So there's also certainly quite a number of resources out there. You know, try learning how to run a few scanning tools on yourself. Also, again, if you need any guidance with this, don't hesitate, you know, to send an email, info@radicallyopensecurity.com. And certainly just, you know, for free, we're friendly. You know, we're also very happy to sort of point you in the right direction. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And all the materials will be shared after the presentation. We will also share the operational security guide that Melanie mentioned, and you will find all the tips and tricks there. And the recording of the session will be also shared with all of you. So once again, thank you so much for participating, for being here with us, and check out our website, the HiveMind platform, TechSoup Europe Facebook page, website, because there are more interesting events coming for our community. So thank you once again. Have a lovely day and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.